You're listening to the Cool CLE Show.
Hi, and thanks for tuning in to the Cool CLE Show, brought to you by CoolCleveland.com, putting you in touch with cool events, people, news, and neighborhoods in the Cleveland region. This week, we're joined by J Milliken, author of Let's Go, a biography of Ben Orr, co-founder, co-lead singer, and bassist for the platinum-selling rock band The Cars. The book is available from November 11th, and we'll hear from Milliken about how much Orr's growing up in Cleveland had on his determination to reach rock stardom. We also have brand new music from Cleveland's Michael McFarland. Between his relentless gigging... Well, he's a bit of a son of Cleveland. It's Ben Orr, and there's a new book coming out on November 11th. We've got the author with us right now, J Milliken. Thank you so much for joining us.
I really appreciate you having me on. I always like to talk to the Cleveland media because of the special connection with Ben. Being a Parma Heights boy.
Right.
So I really appreciate you having me on. It's an honor.
Oh, well, thank you so much. So it's called Let's Go. It's going to be out on November 11th, and it's a biography about Ben Orr. And I must admit, Joe, I'm a bit of a transplant to Cleveland. I grew up in Ohio, but just came back to Ohio after being in Europe for quite some time. And I got to admit, even though I've been involved, I know a lot about classic rock, I always thought the Cars were a Boston band. And it wasn't until I came to Cleveland that, the bomb dropped that these guys are actually, they sort of, Cleveland likes to claim them. So it's quite interesting now that we've got this book coming out. I was just curious, how much did Cleveland actually feature in the Ben Orr story?
Oh, I talk about Cleveland a lot. As a matter of fact, it's ironic that you bring that up because Ben being from Cleveland and learning about his early life in Cleveland, I didn't know anything about that either. And that was actually the hook that made me want to write this book about Ben. When I started this book, I've been a published writer for 20 years, but it's all pretty much magazines and newspapers. So this is my first book. And I was contemplating, I knew it wanted to be about music because I'm a music journalist at heart, but I didn't really know what specifically I was going to write about. And a Cars fan found me on social media, saw that I was from Boston, saw that I was a music journalist. I listed the Cars as one of my early influences. So they contacted me and said, well, you should write a book about Ben Orr. So I thought to myself, well, if I was going to write a book about that, you would think it would be about the Cars in general and not necessarily an individual member. Mm-hmm. But she said, no, you should look into Ben individually and see what you think. So I did a little bit of investigating, and I didn't know that Ben was from Cleveland, and I didn't know that he was a childhood star in that city, if you will. And I learned all these things about him, and I'm like, I wonder if other Cars fans know about this. And I talked to a couple of Cars fans that I knew, and they didn't know either. And I just said to myself, this is the book I'm going to write about. So that's when I decided to write about Ben individually as opposed to the band, because he did all these things 10 or 15 years before he ever became famous in the Cars. And I thought it was a unique story. Of course, Cleveland being the home of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and it all fell into place for me. So it's ironic you bring that up because I did not know that Ben was from Cleveland until I did this investigating, and that was actually the hook that said, "Yep, this is it. I'm going to write his biography," and that's kind of how it started.
So I read that you interviewed lots of different people. I'm assuming you came to Cleveland. Was there anything besides, obviously, a bit like you were, a bit like me, we were a bit naive about his origins. Was there anything else in any of those interviews that kind of were that you were surprised about, that you could kind of let us in on?
Well, there were actually a couple of things that surprised me. One was that, Ben only had one goal in life. His first band, he was 13 years old when he joined his first band. He joined as a drummer. The band was called the Cyclones. And he knew from a very early age that is what he wanted to do in life. He wanted to be in a national band, and, you know, maybe not necessarily thinking being famous, but he wanted to be in a national band. And that was his one goal from the get-go, and there was no plan B. So I found that interesting that from such an early age, he knew what he wanted to do in life. And, I mean, he started at 13. By age 17, he was in the Cleveland band, the Grasshoppers, which ended up being the house band on the nationally syndicated TV show Upbeat. So here's this kid at 17 years old, and his band is on national TV. You know, Upbeat was like the American Bandstand of Cleveland, if you will.
Yep.
So, I mean, this kid was, you know, kind of famous at 17 years old. So he quit school as a sophomore in high school because he knew he wanted to be a professional musician, and his parents backed him. I know that sounds kind of crazy nowadays if someone tried to do that, but back then I don't think it was quite as crazy. But his parents actually backed him and understood his talent and knew what he wanted to do in life. So that was pretty amazing to me that this guy could know at such an early age what he wanted to do and to actually fulfill that dream. So that was something unique for sure. The other thing that I think surprised me the most about Ben, and you have to understand, I worked on this book for a decade in my spare time.
Oh, wow.
But even then, you know, Ben had passed away, you know, almost a decade before I had even started this book. So obviously I couldn't interview the man himself. So I took the idea of I need to interview as many people who were around him as I could so they could all be his voice. So I interviewed over 100 people for this book, from bandmates when he was a kid, to classmates when he was young, to record executives when he was famous, to rock photographers, people from all walks of life that knew him well, I interviewed. And one common thread I found throughout was that Ben sort of had two personas. On stage, he was the ultimate rock star.
Yeah.
But when he walked off stage, he flipped the switch and he became a regular person. He was just a regular guy. Didn't go for the spotlight, didn't walk around, you know, with his chest puffed out like, look at me.
Yeah.
He was a hunter. He was a hunter and a fisherman. He liked nature. He loved animals. He was a very private man. So he really was a normal, different kind of guy off stage. And he was very loyal to Cleveland. He always remained friends with his early bandmates in life. Just a really great guy. And that was the other thing that really kind of amazed me about him. Yeah, exactly, that he didn't let the rock and roll lifestyle like go to his head, if you will. And,
which is, like you say, is pretty crazy, especially when you start it so young. You know, yeah, like nowadays, all these Disney singers, she'll be unnamed, you know, sort of go off the rails and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, he didn't sort of soak all that in.
It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing how a guy could want to do that from such an early age, and then he actually accomplishes it, and he doesn't let it go to his head.
Yeah.
He remains a mellow person, and, you know, true to his friends and true to his hometown, and he was a very humble man. So a very unique individual, to say the least.
Now, did I see that you went to the Rock Hall of Fame award ceremony this past year when the Cars were inducted? Did I see that on social media?
Yes, I was there.
What was that like?
And it was, it was a thrill for sure. I spent maybe 4 days in Cleveland. I got there a day or two beforehand. My public relations coordinator, Donna Neal, and I went to Cleveland for the ceremony. I actually went to the day before the ceremony. They had like a media day event at the Rock Hall, which I attended, and I got to do a couple of local radio interviews. I actually did a Fox TV Cleveland interview that day, so I got to promote the book a little bit the day before, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day, Donna and I attended the Rock Hall ceremony, which was, it was incredible to be there, for sure.
Yeah. I think the Cars, I think the Cars stole the show. I was way up in the rafters. You were probably down there where the posh people sit,
no.
but
nope, I can tell. I will be honest and tell you that I was in the nosebleed.
You were
myself.
in the rafters. Okay.
I was.
Who knows? We could have been sat next to each other all that time. We never knew.
You never know. Yeah, it was wonderful. It was a great performance. And unfortunately, I mean, the Cars. When the Cars debut album came out, I was in 7th grade and just starting to get into rock and roll. So they were actually one of the first. They were an early influence on me, musically speaking. So even though they were one of my favorite bands all these years, for some reason, I never saw them in concert back in the day, which just disappoints me big time now.
Yeah, because they were so amazing. They must have been awesome.
Did I never go see that band? So I can at least now say that I got to see a form of the band at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ceremony. So it was really great to be there.
All right. So, now that you told me this took you 10 years, maybe this is maybe I already know the answer to the question, but now that you've got this taste for writing books, do you think you'll ever do another one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
I will definitely do another book. Oh, yes. Now that I've experienced it and I've learned a lot, I admit that this being my first book, I was green. I've been published for 20 years, but all newspapers and magazines, which is a totally different animal. So I had a lot of learning to do as far as publishing this book. I for the longest time, I was thinking that I would have to self-publish it. But when I started contacting some publishers, I pretty much got a deal right away, which was a thrill for me. And I definitely it'll definitely be music related. I have a short list of ideas that I want to write about for my next book, but I haven't made that decision yet. I'm going to let this book come out, and I'm going to be doing some promotions for the next few months. So I need to let it settle down a little bit, but I definitely have some ideas, and I do want to do another book, and I definitely will be. Just need to figure out what angle to take at this point.
Yeah.
I will say though, if it's going to be a biography, I'm going to try to do it on somebody that is actually alive, because God rest his soul. It's a lot harder to write a book about somebody
that's
when
not
they're
there.
not with us anymore. So that's one thing I learned, that I'm going to try to make it about somebody who's still with us, so I could actually talk to them.
Yeah, I'm sure that would be a challenge, definitely. But it sounds like you've done a very good job. And so the book's out on November 11th. You can go on to benorbook.com and read more about Joe and read more about the book and pre-order it and all kinds of things. I'm assuming it's on Amazon, so it's all the basic retailers that you would expect to find a book. And we're really excited. Can't wait to read it, Joe.
I really appreciate it. Yes, it is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. The publisher is Rowman & Littlefield. It can also be ordered at their website. And I am currently, Donna and I are currently working on, we want to have a couple of book launching events. We do plan on having one in Cleveland.
Oh, that'd be cool.
I feel it's only appropriate to come back to Ben's hometown.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Joe. It's been great to talk to you, and we can't wait to see the book. And obviously, when you're in town, make sure you let us know. We'll let people know about it too.
Oh, I really appreciate it. I will definitely keep you updated, and it's an honor to be on your show. And I want to thank all the Cars and Cleveland fans out there who have supported me with this book. It's greatly appreciated, and I thank you very much.
Now we have new music from Michael McFarlane. His 6th album, House of Ghost, features what he says